Hi, my name is Colin. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're on episode 6.5 in my music career series, Going to School for Higher Education. So, as you guys know, my background is in commercial music, mostly on film and game scoring, and of course, writing popular songs also. And I want to share you guys my experience study at a commercial school. And I'm gonna bring a special guest. His name is Jacob. He's in the process of finishing his doctoral degree. He has another semesters to go. Basically, he's almost done. So he's gonna share his background in studying classical music for a doctoral degree, and I'm gonna be share my experiments studying commercial music at a higher education institute. So that way, by the end of this video, you guys know which path is for you. It can be commercial music in my path, or it can be classical music in his path, or none of the paths actually work for you. Maybe you want to end up being a performer, conductor, or something else, which is fine. But our goal for this video is for you to understand if it's worth it to study higher education in commercial and classical music, if it's for you, and you guys gonna be evaluating what we said, and we also gonna be talking about the job market as well. So by the end of this video, you should have a clear idea if this market if so I mean by the end of this video, you guys will know if this career path is for you, and you will also be aware if it's very competitive or not competitive at all. So now I'm gonna bring in my guest Jacob, and I want him to introduce himself to you guys.
All right. Hello, my name is Jacob Blodgett. I am a composer and writer from the California Bay Area. I've been mostly studying around the area, and I just got back from 2 years on the East Coast doing my doctorate. I'm currently now working on my dissertation, which should have it be all done by winter so that I can graduate and be Dr. Blodgett.
Nice, Dr. Project. I will make sure I call you that in half a year.
Okay.
Half a year flies. I'm pretty sure we will get to that moment. So I'm gonna introduce myself. I know in my past videos I didn't really talk about myself a lot, so I guess this is the moment for me to tell you a little bit about me. So I met Jacob when I was getting my first master's study classical composition at Cal State East Bay in Hayward, California. So that's how we met, and he's a very nice person, very easy person to talk to. He's also a great guitarist, even though he didn't say it when he introduced to you. I mean, okay, very good at playing jazz guitar. I know he studied classical compositions, but his bachelor degree is jazz guitar. But I mean, either way, they classical and jazz music have a lot of overlap. So I just think like everybody should be capable to do both sides. Yeah, in my experience. So so basically after I've graduated from Cal State East Bay, I'm actually like 2 years ahead, right, Jacob? I'm 2 years ahead of you when I was in the program,
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, that means I'm older. Yeah. So so after I graduated from Cal State East Bay, I was actually in his shoes. I was actually considered if I should go into a doctoral degree to study music compositions. I'm also a big fan of classical music. I play a lot of Beethoven's Pavarotti, a lot of pieces from Franz Liszt also. So at the time, I was actually considered going into a doctoral program. But I also have a very big passion in film and game scoring because I grew up watching movies and playing video games just like many of you. So I ended up going to Seattle Film Institute to study film and game scoring in Seattle. It's another 1 year program, so that's where I did my second master's. So so with our experiments, we both ended up going to the next level of educations after our first master's degree in classical compositions. So and I'm gonna share with you what I learned in the programs, so that way you guys know what to expect going into a film school. And then Jacob's gonna share his experience studying classical music. What kind of softwares or what kind of musical skills he learned, and he's gonna share that with you. So by the end of our sharing, you will have some ideas what kind of skills you will get in a commercial program versus a classical program. So I'm gonna get started with this. So in year 2015 to 16, I left California and went to Seattle to pursue my second master's in film and game scoring in Seattle Film Institute. It was very nice. Seattle has a lot of nice places to visit. I love it. I love living there. I just wish I see some snows when I was there because Seattle usually snow for a week, but I didn't see snow that year. Yeah, but anyways, so for my research that I know, there are not a lot of film schools like in the whole country. In the United States, there are about like 5 to 6 schools offer film and game scoring, and most of the curriculums are very similar. So you get to learn orchestrations, how to orchestrate for orchestra, big band, and choirs, and you get to learn more scales like different modes like mixolydians, Lydian mode. You write music with modes, and you also learn like ethnic scales like maybe the Hungarian minor scales like a harmonic, basically it's a harmonic minor scales with a raised fourth, so you can write with a different sound like an ethnic sound like Arabian Arabic sound, and Asian music pentatonic scales. So you basically have to learn a lot of tonal harmonies in writing music, which is pretty cool. So I didn't really get a chance to explore more tonal harmony in the classical pro. So I didn't really get a chance to explore tonal harmony that far when I was getting my first master's degree. So I really enjoyed this brainwashing experiments. And then on top of learning those tonal writing, you also have to learn how to write strong melodies, strong and memorable melodies, like the ones you hear in John Williams, like all the film music that have strong melodies, which is pretty cool. That was what I was expecting to learn. And I do think I learned those skill sets that I just stated here. And in addition, this part really shocked me because I grew up, I mean, the way I do it is less technologies. I usually just write everything down on papers and I type it out sometimes on Finale. I'm not really a tech person. And then I just noticed like half the curriculum is music software. I was like, oh my gosh, I did not sign up for this. So that part kind of shocked me out because I didn't when I was getting my first master, I had no idea what the heck is Logic Pro Pro Tools. I never heard of those softwares in my life. I'm serious. Even though right now I'm a certified Pro Tools instructor, very good using it. I'm teaching that at 2 colleges that I'm working for right now. Yeah, but it was a shocking experience. I never thought about I had to learn mixing and do MIDI editing, use MIDI to create a virtual orchestra sound. So I thought this is a very interesting skill set to learn in a film school. And I do believe that the film school taught pretty in depth in music softwares, but definitely it's not enough to work in the industry. I actually went further and self-taught a lot further in Logic Pro, Pro Tools. I even went to the AFIS office to certify Pro Tools to get to where I'm at. I would say like going to a film school is that it's just a starting point, but in terms of working in the industry, you have to take yourself to the next level on your writing skill, composition skill, and same thing for music softwares and conducting too. I'm actually glad that I studied conducting at Cal State East Bay for like a year. Like me, Jacob, and I took all the possible conducting classes because as a composer, we have to know how to conduct and be able to conduct. And yes, we are both A students, but I knew he conduct a little bit better than me. I tell you the truth. Yeah, I think I remember correctly. We both got the A's, but I think his A was a little bit higher than me, so he's still better than me in conducting. Yeah, but I do have an advantage. I know how to conduct with click tracks in the film scoring sections, like following the click track. So maybe that experience he doesn't have, but in classical conducting, he's probably better than me. Yeah, so now let me tell you some of the music software you expect to learn really quick, and then I'm gonna shift it over to him. So for notation, you learn Finale, Sibelius, and recently a lot of school implementing Doctoral because you can attach Doctoral notation to Cubase when you do media mockup. And for DAWs, the digital audio workstations, you get to learn Digital Performer, Logic Pro, and Cubase. And nowadays most people use Cubase. And again, for mixing, recording, you learn Pro Tools. And same thing for beat mapping, for to line up your music with the film for beat mapping. You're gonna learn how to do it. You're gonna learn how to do this in all the DAWs. And lastly, for game scoring, you get to learn Wise and Fmon, like how to route your musical tracks into the games. So it's a lot of softwares, a lot of writing, a lot of music to write, and a lot of conducting too. So that's basically what you learn in film school. Now I'm gonna shift it over to Jacob right now, so he's gonna share his experience for what he learned in a classical school.
Yes, my experience is a little different. I started in community college and I didn't get any certification or anything. I just wanted to get my general education. I was then accepted into Cal State East Bay, where I got my bachelor's in jazz guitar and my master's in composition. And I was playing in the big band, the jazz ensembles while I was there, really having a good foundation, even when I was studying classical composition. It was during my master's that I was applying for other graduate programs to get my doctorate. And that's when I was accepted into the DMA program at the University of Hartford's Hart School of Music, Theater, and Dance. And
Got it.
I say DMA because there are actually 3 different degrees you can get
Oh,
in music after a master's. There's the most common, or at least the most commonly thought of, which is a PhD. That's mainly for research degrees such as ethnomusicology, music history, music education. The second one is what I'm getting, which is a DMA. DMAs are more common for application based degrees such as performance, conducting, and then composition is kind of half and half. The UCs give PhDs, whereas a lot of
mhm.
the uh, higher ed schools in the East Coast, like Cornell or Yale, those give DMAs. The third one is what's called an AD or artist diploma, and that is taking the level in which you would be studying at a doctoral level, but taking out most of the peripheral elements of the degree. So even if you were a uh, classical pianist, it would still be expected to take classes in music history and music theory, but the DMA would really reduce those and have you mostly focus on your major. That is,
Good. I have a Yeah, that's good to
yeah.
know. I have a quick questions for that. I know you stated the three options. Can you tell us if there's any requirement like taking a GRE or
Hmm.
anything for like doctoral, PhD, or the artist diploma?
Definitely. There is a requirement for the GRE based on the school itself. The schools that I applied to ranged from you need to take the GRE and you need a certain score on each one, to the University of Hartford was mostly about you need to take the GRE. I scored pretty well in the GRE, mainly for my major. And in terms of language, part of my DMA is a reading proficiency in one foreign language. Mine is German.
Wow.
For other schools or for other programs, they're going to probably expect more, maybe not.
Mm.
Definitely for ethnomusicology or really music history, you might even need up to 3 languages to be proficient in. And
Oh, wow, that's a lot. And Jacob, I'm gonna interrupt one thing really quick. For my viewers for commercial music, I actually did take the GRE, but going into any film school in the United States it was not
mm,
necessary. Now you can continue.
sure.
Yeah.
When I was accepted into the University of Hartford, it was very different from my previous experience in the emphasis in which the department put on interdisciplinary collaboration. It was very much part of their system to have collaborations between the music department and the theater department, between music and dance, music and film, music and art. And they really emphasized getting outside of it and really thinking of your art as a multidisciplinary expression. So that led to not only scoring music for what you think you'd be scoring music for, like chamber ensembles, orchestra, chamber orchestras, but also scoring for a theatrical production, collaborating with a choreographer for a final project, and then also writing music for film and video as well. Those are projects that I
Nice.
did across the 2 years I was there, where I had a total of 8 opportunities to write music for performers, 4 of which were for recordings, and then 4 of which were for live performance. And that also is in tandem with the curriculum that you would most likely expect for a conservatory setting. I took classes on graduate ear training, form and analysis, the symphony, as well as classes in music technology. And I know that, Colin, you talked about music technology in terms of learning all of the different types of DAWs, all the different types of
Mhm.
scoring for game softwares, and most likely the digital sound libraries that you used with all
Right.
those systems. For us, it is expected that you take classes in music technology, but in more of the regard of you being an electronic composer, which you may or may not be. The requirement was to take a class in Logic, and we did that. There were also opportunities to write music for film and do all the technology that you would expect with that, mostly in Logic or your DAW, as well as using your sound libraries. But mainly for writing music as an electronic composer, that would be also using more academic systems of music software, such as
Mhm.
uh, Medicine.
Max MSP.
Yes,
Oh, medicine.
Max MSP
Oh,
is definitely the big one, and then Medicine is also another one. And then depending on what you did with your music software, you might be one who uses Ableton Live. You might be someone
mhm.
who uses Cubase. But you are definitely somebody who uses either Finale or Sibelius. Uh,
Right. Quick questions for you.
yeah.
For if people are going to this route and write music for electronic, do they use notations? I'm always curious to know.
Well, that depends. It depends on the project that you have. So,
Oh,
for
okay.
example, one of the pieces that we studied was by Mark Applebaum called Aphasia. And
Is he the composer professor at Stanford?
yes,
Oh yeah, I knew him.
and in this piece,
I
go ahead.
mhm.
Oh,
I actually met him when I was at UC Irvine
yeah.
at my 4th year studying. He came to my school to give a quick talk. I mean, I didn't say hi or anything. I just sat there the whole time. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah, continue.
In his piece, Aphasia, it's actually for choreographer or for performer to do certain movements that synchronize to a predetermined backing track. And in the score, it's really a combination of kind of traditional scoring, which has to do more with the gestures that the performer makes, and a little graphic design, which more represents the shape of the sounds themselves to kind of follow along in the score. So definitely, if you're doing a completely electronic track, you're not going to use notation. If you're
Right.
intersecting electronic music with a performer, then you're definitely going to use notation for the performer, and then just
Mhm.
the electronic backing track. That's really your decision to, in what degree you do use music technology and what degree you use music notation.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good that you share your experience on that. So, do you mind? So, before we talk about the two special questions we have to end the video, do you mind you tell us like how many pages you wrote for your dissertations? I'm actually curious to know.
Well, I'm about half done, and the amount of pages really depends. I can tell you that one of the, like, of course, the faster the music is, the more pages it's going to be. And one movement that's only half done is about 16 pages. So I would say that now I'm probably up to 50 to 60 pages. And
Wow.
this is all the full score. So it's not the French score, the condensed score that you would probably expect to
Mhm,
find in other symphonic scores that you would look at.
mhm.
Um,
I see. Well, I guess I do have another additional questions. Did you have to get do you have to get your dissertation performed or is it optional?
it is optional.
Oh,
Of
okay.
course, you really don't want it sitting in the library forever and not really getting
Right.
performed. And that is a concern that you do have when you are making such a big piece, is that maybe it's a piece that is more grander in scope and idea rather than instrumentation. My
Okay, I see.
my piece in particular is for a chamber ensemble, so voice and chamber ensemble, around 22 performers. So that is big, but I don't think it's very unreasonable. But to score for a giant symphony orchestra with, you know, quadruple woodwinds is probably going to be much more challenging to get performed.
Got it. Okay. That sounds pretty good to me. So let's move on to our questions.
Yes, and I want to ask you uh,
Mhm.
what I think would be a very relevant question in deciding whether or not to go to higher education in music is what it would cost financially to get the degree both in a master's in film scoring and a doctorate in music composition.
Okay. So I'm gonna go first about talking about the tuitions. So my master's program was about 11 months. Basically, you can just call it 1 year, and I pay about 40K just for the tuitions. So it within the tuitions, it covers all the classes, and you get the 24 hours access to the labs that you need to work on, the composing, mixing, whatever you do, and the tuition also covers the 9 recording sessions we have from range of 3 musicians up to a full orchestra. So we have a total of 9, and you get to conduct most of them. So if you have a conducting background from your previous degree, that would be much more ideal because you're able to conduct in a way to express the volume changes, expressions. But but you can still go to a film scoring program without conducting degree. They do teach you the basics of it. But again, there's so many courses you can't expect them to teach you how to be a master's conductor. So I would definitely say to go into a film school, it's better that you have good piano skills and good conducting skill, both choral and instrumental.
Hmm.
And the tuition does not cover the health benefits, so you have to pay for your own. You just pay. You just get again. You just get the 9 recording sessions, free printing for your scores, and then and that's basically it. And I only bought like 3 books,
Hmm.
less than $100, and food, transportation, housing you had to pay for yourself. I was kind of lucky because when I was in Seattle, Microsoft and Amazon were not that top notch at the time, but right now when I look at the housing price, oh my gosh. Seattle is not that far away from Bay Area in terms of the cost of livings. I mean, it's
Hmm.
still a little bit cheaper than the Bay Area, but it's going up. So again, so I pay about 40K, and I was a piano teacher during the 2 years I was getting my first master's degree and doing many other things. So I was actually able to save up money and not having to take out loans. So I mean I do have loans after I graduated, but that was for my undergraduate degree. I have about 15K, but I paid off in less than 1 year after I graduated. So and to go into a film school or a classical school for higher educations, you definitely should do your math before you go into it. Don't just go in and walk out with like 100K of debt. All right, so I tell you what I cover. Jacob, can you tell me the cost of your doctorate program and what does your tuition covers?
Sure. So the sticker price of the doctorate, which included 2 years of full-time coursework and 1 year of your dissertation, comes out to $60,000. That does not
Okay.
cover housing or housing deposits or same as what you said, health benefits or anything. That's only tuition. Now there is financial aid, and I was very fortunate to not only have financial aid but to be appointed the graduate teaching fellow for the composition department, which also gave me money And if you combine that with working in the library, which I didn't do, but I could have done, that would basically wipe off half of your total tuition. So, granted, that's not everything. You do still have to pay for room and board yourself. Either you're living in graduate housing or you're living off campus, which includes food, transportation, and it does cost a significant amount. And I definitely agree with what Colin said in that you really should calculate what it is you can afford both at that moment and going into the future, because the more you put off your debt, the more you have to pay in the long run. So definitely planning it out and making sure that you have a sort of trajectory, whether you are going to immediately work by the time you finish your degree, if you're working during your degree, um, that would be something to really consider before you go into a doctorate, and something before you do anything. Just how much is it going to cost, and is that something that you're willing to bank on going into the future?
Got it. And so he mentioned specifically about being a teaching assistant, or what do you call that? Fellowships
Yes,
or
it is a fellowship, but it's
Mhm,
a fellowship to be a teacher's assistant.
mhm.
For mine, it's called a graduate teaching fellow, and I was the one who was giving the first year composition students their weekly lessons. So it was
Good.
not only beneficial that it gave me some income, but it really gave me the experience as a faculty instructor to be able to put on my resume that I gave
Right.
composition lessons.
That's actually another plus about going into a classical school, because going to commercial school, you don't have the privilege to teach like lower classmate, because if you go to a film school, you only see the 10, 20 people in the classroom. You don't teach anyone under, because in film school, there's no undergrad. You only see the grad student.
Hmm.
So there's no teaching fellowship for film schools. So my next question I have for Jacob is that, I know the 3 years is gonna be busy, but can you tell us that if you feel like do you feel like you have some time to work, or do you have some personal time too? Like if you want to take like Friday night off for movies to meet up with friends, do you feel like you have the time to do it?
So that's a very complicated question because it's really based on who you are as a person and what your peripheral life is like. There were many of my classmates who were either getting engaged, getting married, or about to have a family while they were finishing up their doctorate. And of course, when you're supporting your significant other and yourself while trying to get a doctorate, even a master's, that's going to eat up pretty much all of your time. It's
I
also,
see.
I felt very fortunate that I had saved up enough money so that I didn't have to work the first year I was there, and that I did have free time in order to just relax and let all of the information that was coming up or that was coming at me at breakneck speed, just let it absorb. Because that's one of the things that's very challenging is that you can just kind of let everything wash over you and not really absorb it in a way that's really long term. So it really depends on how many how many commitments that you have in going into the doctoral program. And there are people who do have to work. There are people who do have to
Mhm.
hold part-time jobs and just to support themselves. And that's very unfortunate that that happens. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's something that you have to take into account is how much time are you going to have to really devote to your art while trying to keep afloat. So
Right.
I guess the short answer is yes, you can have free time, but whether or not you make the free time by giving up something else, that's really your choice.
I see. Same thing for me in the film school. But I mean, in the film school, I would say every 2 weeks you might be able to take like a Friday off. It's still very busy, and I was still able to work about 5 hours a week to teach piano. So that actually took care my rent. Yeah, so I would say probably in terms of free time, I have about 5 to 10 hours, which
Hmm.
is not that bad as a graduate student, right, Jacob?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the thing about a graduate program is, of course, you're never going to study enough. You're never going to learn enough music. You're never going to write enough music. you're never going to play enough. It's all about budgeting what time you have, not just time, but also energy, and really understanding what it means to prioritize. Because there are going to be things that you really need to do, and then things that you absolutely need to do. And they're all going to sound like they're the same, but they're very much different things. So to be able to budget your time and energy is a skill that you will have to learn when you go into a graduate program.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay, that's good to know. All right, so I guess we do have one last question. Uh,
Yes, and I think it was based on both of our experiences. Um, would you recommend somebody going to the film program or to a composition program? And if you would, who might that person be?
okay, so to answer that questions, I'm gonna have to I'm actually a very honest person, very realistic, very straightforward. If you guys know me in person, so in my recommendations, I believe that people should go into a film school to study film and game scoring if that's absolutely the only one thing you want to do in your life, because it's just the job market. To get straight up, people who wants to get a degree is to find a job, right? That's what most Americans do, right, Jacob?
I'll address that when you get to
Right?
me, but go ahead.
Okay, okay. But I'm just saying the. I would say you have to be aware that there would be a very high risk going into a film school, because it's not because right now I'm filming this during Corona, they all stopped the film productions, but I'm just saying in general, there is just not a lot of jobs in the industry for film and games, because if you look at like the theater IMDb or look at AMC Cinemark website, they're always the same composers who are composing the blockbuster films, and many of them actually don't retire. So the last generations, people didn't really have to do that much networking to find jobs in the industry. But right now, a lot of young people like me, as a starter, we have to keep on messaging random people on IMDb Pro, randomly go to those meetup events for filmmakers to meet people for collaborations. But what happened is that most of them don't have the budgets. When they have the budgets, they just pay the actors or video editors, and a lot of times they treat music as a joke, like you're always a person who works for free in the bottom line. So I just find out that's very ridiculous, because like in a monthly basis, I constantly have people like messaging me. Some of them do pay me, which is great, but like half of them, they always ask, can you they ask desperately, can you please do me a favor, like can you just do write in some music and put it in for us. If you have a producers to fund your projects, you should at least budget like some to the composers. And I think it's, I mean, I don't blame them for this. I think it's because in the job market nowadays, you get to listen to basically any songs for free on YouTube. People just feel like they just treat music as a free product. So there's a lot of misconceptions. Like as a film composer, I need to educate those people. Like composers need to get paid, and I believe in this generations we're not at the point that people understand they have to pay the composers to write the music. They don't get that composers need to eat too. So I just find out that it's ridiculous. However, if you really break into the industry for like scoring a AAA games and Hollywood films, you do make a lot of money. So I would say the going into a film school is a big risk. So if you're gonna go into it, you have to basically aim to be the best, because you either make no money or you make a lot of money. There's no middle ground in this field. And that's basically the risk I want you guys to be aware if this is the career you want to go into it. And you should only go into it if this is the absolutely one thing you want to do in your life. If you have something else to do in your life, I won't recommend you to go into this career. Even though you graduate with a degree, it's so competitive out there. You have to fight to be the best. So that's what I want to tell my viewers about it. And right now, if you're wondering what I'm doing right now, so I mean, I still have a couple clients I constantly write music for like electronic art, and some short films projects that I have been working with in the last few years. They do pay, and then on top of that, I also work as an adjunct professors and two other schools. So I'm basically like half in the industry and half teaching, and my income is still pretty stable. So I think I'm pretty happy for what I earned, but I'm definitely still gonna try and get up my career up there. But in the meantime, I want you guys to know that the risk is pretty high for this career. So that's all I have to say, Jacob. Now I'm gonna ask you this question now. So based on your experience and how you feel about the current job market in your field, the classical world, it can be like being a professor or writing for ensembles as a commissions. So, do you recommend anyone to go to a school to pursue a doctorate degree in music composition?
In answering that, I would say that you have two sides to this. You have your financial and career goals, and then you have your artistic goals. And those, I think, are, to me, half and half, where you do want to have a life in which you are financially stable, because some people really do want to grow up and support families and have kids and basically be productive members of society through their art. So you do want to be aware of what your financial goals are while also being aware of what your artistic goals are. I can tell you that I had a wonderful, just amazing musical education that I can't really put a sticker price on because I've just grown as a composer and as a person in ways that I can't really estimate how much that would really cost. So to me, that's really half of the equation. You want to improve as an artist, but you also want to make a living in one way or another. In terms of the job market, it's really half and half too, because you do get the notion that if somebody goes and gets a doctorate, then they're most likely going to want to teach. And though that might be true, for some people, they don't want to teach. They want to get the highest amount of education that they can get and then just do what they want to do. And those are the options in which you earn as your own entrepreneur, basically. You can go and teach either full time or part time. Full time is going to be more challenging to get because it is competitive. Or you can do anything with your job. You can be a music copyist. You can be somebody who writes for band, who writes for choir, who is in music retail. You can basically do anything you want, and you can even either do that full time as long as you put in the effort, or you can piece together a bunch of part time jobs until that becomes a full time gig, a full time career. So I would be very wary to say whether or not you can actually pay back anything or just say, okay, if you don't think you're going to be at the top of the game, then don't go, because these are all very personal questions that you need to ask. What do you want to do with your doctorate? For me, I just wanted freedom. I just wanted the ability to say, okay, I really do want to teach now, and I have a doctorate, so now I can go to the universities and apply there, and they'll look at my application because I'm Dr. Blodgett. I also wanted to make it an option that I could write for theater, write for dance, have the ability to understand the way in which music is created, and to just be a better artist and better human being. And that is a luxury that I was afforded because I didn't really have to scrimp and save as much as others because I was very privileged in the way that I went about it. And that's something that you have to personally make as a choice, whether or not you can afford that and whether or not you want to afford that. So, to put it into a very nice package, that is your choice whether or not you should go to higher education. And if you think that the cost of it would be too much, no matter how much you might grow as an artist, that's one reason not to go or to go. But if you think that no matter what, I want to get better at this thing therefore I want to go to school and study it, definitely that would be a reason to go. And I think just the important thing here is to be honest with yourself and say, do you really want to do music for your entire life? And if the answer is yes, then that's really the answer to your question.
And for in regards to like, I know you just mentioned about writing, you have the options to write for different ensembles like theater. Do you have any knowledge about the current job market? Is it hard to get connections with them, and do they pay you well? Do you have any ideas for them for my questions?
Right. Well,
Because I know some viewers want to go into this path because they might not be interested in film scoring like me. They might be interested in writing theater. So do you have any ideas how the job market works and how much they pay the composers?
sure. Uh, Based on who you write for, that's going to affect how much you would get paid. If you, for example, if you look at dance or theater, they might be more concerned about having somebody on staff who works the sound system in the black box theater. That may be their more concern, and then they might ask you to do composition for the production. I think, of course, if you wrote your own theatrical productions, like if you were a music theater composer, then that would be the demand for them to play your music and pay for your music. In terms of being like writing for bands or writing for choir, that's based on the ensemble and that's based on the how much they can commission you for, and that's going to depend wildly or very wildly based on who you're writing for. But
Okay, so
yeah,
yeah, so basically the salary is based on what the ensemble pays you. I get that part. But I guess my question is really is it tough to get connections from that? Like in the entertainment business? Because you know how I stated in the entertainment business is very hard to break in. It's really depending on your luck, who you meet and stuff. Does that happen in the theater and dance music territory?
if you are not committed to what they do, then they won't be committed to what you do. So
No, I know. I'm saying my question about meeting those
I
people. Is it
that
hard
well,
to?
that's exactly my
Yeah.
point. Is that when
Uh-huh.
you go to the theatrical productions and you stay after and you talk to the actors and you talk to the director and you make the personal connections, those will lead
Mhm.
to professional connections. If you're
Got
somebody
it.
who just sends the music and says, I want to write music for you, then there's no personal connection there. So the
Right.
personal connections come first because these are other artists who make their living, or maybe even not their living. Maybe they just do it for enjoyment and for something that they have a real passion for. That's their passion, just like music is our
Got it.
passion. And
I
once you
see.
make the personal connections, then the professional connections will come and they'll be there. But you just need to be committed.
Got it. Got it. So I actually do have one little short question related to what you said before we end today's video. I guess it's the location questions because do you have to be in the East Coast? Because I know most of those things happens in the East Coast. How, because you said personal connection, so they prefer you to be there. So c- do you have any ideas for the locational part?
Well, I would recommend that you try and cultivate your local connections before you try and branch out to other areas in other parts of the country. There are
Mhm.
dance collectives here in the Bay Area. There are theater houses. There are new music organizations. And there is a way in which you can cultivate connections, but people really appreciate when they're staring at a real person rather than an email or a profile online. Now, I don't want anybody to be watching this in the future and saying, oh, yeah, but wasn't there a pandemic right now? Well, yes, of course, there's a pandemic right now. And we're
Right,
talking as though it doesn't exist because we don't want it to exist. But going
right.
into the future, you will need to meet people face to face, even if it is
Mhm.
through Skype or Zoom or anything, because that's the personal connection that people really appreciate.
Or you even meet them once in real life. That also matters a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and same thing for film and game scoring. So I'm pretty sure you guys know Los Angeles is the center of it. But I notice a lot of people, once they meet those people in persons and work for like a couple of years with that personal connections, and for any future collaborations, you don't have to live there anymore, for at least for my field. But for starting, I think it's better to be there. You meet those people, and then if you don't like Los Angeles, you can move out and then keep working on them remotely. And then for recording sessions, you just go back to Los Angeles, or you record it in Eastern Europe. So in my case, it's slightly different than Jacob's. But I mean, in the beginning, you should be there, but in the long term, it's optional if you want to be at that area, for if you want to pursue the entertainment industry path. Yeah. So Jacob, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that's a really good start because, of course, I've been studying music for 9 years now, in higher education, and
Mhm.
it feels like I just started, to be honest. So you might have that sensation if and when you do pursue music as a full time academic or as a full time career. But definitely just keep learning and keep loving, which is going to be hard sometimes. I don't know if you've had that experience where you sometimes forget that you love music, but sometimes you need to go back and say, why am I doing this? Oh, because I love music. And that's something I want to do for the rest of my life.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's also another part about going into higher education in music. You should really think about, like, even either for commercial or classical music, you should really think about, you should go into it if you feel like this is what I want to do for long term. If you're gonna do it for short term, you can just get a bachelor degree. You do not need to go to higher education. If you just want to learn music for fun, there's no point of getting a there's no point of getting a doctorate or a PhDs in that, because it's just short term for you. Yeah, but for long term, and you want to do it, and you just did the math for financials and everything, you should consider going into a film school like me or a classical school like Jacob. Yeah, so that's all the advice we have to give it to you. If you Anyhow, so I hope Jacob and I provided you guys some insights about going to school for commercial music to work in the music industry, or going to classical music to become a professors and write music for different ensembles and choirs is for you. So I hope we both provided the pros and cons for commercial and classical music. And I hope we give you enough details that you can make your own decision whether if it's for you or not. But I would like to tell you that, guys, that either you go into commercial and classical, both ways are super competitive. So Jacob, you do agree with me, right?
They are competitive in making a full time living on one
Yes,
job.
that's what I'm saying.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would like to say is that what I would like to say to conclude this video is that, like, after you get your doctor's degree, to go to his path, or get a master's degree in film score and go into my path, you probably won't be making a living in the starting, at least the first few years, for doing a full time on what you're supposed to be doing. You have to work up there with patience. So Jacob, you agree with me on that, right?
It definitely takes a long time, and it's
Yeah.
really the thing that weeds people out is just how much time you have.
Right, and I tell you that the people who stay until the end were the ones that can break into the classical or the commercial world. I have seen people who were in the field for like 1 or 2 years, they drop out and do something else, not really compose again. I have seen people who stick for 5 to 10 years and they break in, but I also see people who stick for 10 years and not breaking in. So there is no guarantee. You just have to stick until the end and see if it's worth it for your life trying, or you might try and get in. So you have to be aware of the risk. So anyhow, so if you like my videos, give me a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any questions, leave your comments below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And Jacob will do the same thing on my YouTube channel. And make sure you check out his website in the description below if you guys are interested to hear some of his great music. So I look forward to see you guys on episode 7. So episode 7, because I already say the title on episode 6 what my episode 7 is going to be, so I'm not going to talk about. No, you know what? I tell you guys, my episode 7 is about how is life like being a popular musician and what do you do as a popular musician. So I look forward to see you guys on the next video. Bye.